Musta, and welcome back finally to another episode of the Familyhood Podcast, where again, it's just a bunch of childhood friends who want to talk about anything and everything under the sun. So it's been a while, guys. Glad that we're back finally after like a 3, 4 week hiatus, maybe. Things have been busy. It's good that we get to record this again finally. Well, we really wanted this to be a light one at first, a light topic. But given that it's already October, we're kind of in the mood to talk about the upcoming holiday, which is, of course, Halloween, All Souls Day, All Saints Day. If for all of you keeping count of what actual holidays it is, we wanted to go back to what we did as young adolescent or maybe children, what we did as children, which was basically tell each other real life in air quotes ghost stories. So I think this one's going to be an exciting one. Of course, as always, you have me, Luigi, your host. With me today, it's actually just the three of us. So it's Carly. Hello, Carl. And Trish. Hi, Trish. How are you doing? So, if you guys can't see right now, if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, the two of them are holding up their rosary because we kind of had a briefing before the recording on what kind of topics or on what kind of stories that we'll be talking about. So a lot of it, of course, revolves around the usual ghost stories that we had as children. It's usually just hearsay or here and there stories that maybe our parents told us to get us scared. And then we kind of got into this real stuff, which was basically real life experiences of people. And I think this is interesting because as Filipinos, I think we like our horror stories. We do have a lot of Filipino folklore surrounding a lot of this. We have a lot of terminologies for different kinds of happenings or paranormal activities. So yeah, this is what we really wanted to talk about to get us to get us kind of in the mood for Halloween and just overall to scare each other from time to time. So welcome you guys. I don't know how we're going to start this. Are we going to be like who has the scariest story or do we start from the least
Least
scary story? Okay.
me.
The least scary story. All right, Carl. You could go ahead and tell us about experiences.
Funny you mentioned about our parents scaring us through these stories. Automatically, what popped in my head was a story that would be mentioned to me again and again to make me behave. And it's about this house beside my grandparents' house. You can see it if you look at the window from the kitchen. So next to the house, there's a big window as well. So when I'm not behaving, I was always told, look at the lady, she's looking at you. So you should behave. And I never see anyone leave that house or get inside that house. So I always had an eerie feeling about that house. I never confirmed if there actually was a bad spirit or it's just normal people. And sadly, we we made a bad story about them that they're
Oh
ghosts or
no.
whatever. I'm
What?
sorry, neighbor.
to
But
whoever lives next to Carly's grandparents' house, they're so sorry that they had to make scary stories about you. I'm sure they're real people. It just
Oh
happens
my
to be.
god.
but as a child, I don't know if it worked. If I believed those scary stories, I know that they used on my nephews. Like they say, behave because the security guard will get you.
It's the normal Filipino
Yeah.
parent. They're like, hoy, guard, guard. Tingnan mo to, oh. She's crying. Take her away, take her away. It's the usual. It's
Yeah, and
scare
it's
tactic.
like it's like you can really see the generation of who's trying to take care of the child because when it's your grandparents they tell you, oh, there's a capre or there's an aswang or I don't know what you call that in English, monster or a shapeshifter or something like that.
Yeah, basically
And then
there's
when
different. Yeah,
it's
there's
when it's
different
your
monsters.
parents, it's the guards you're gonna use to scare you. So you can really see the difference between the generations. But then across time, like with us, we still have those mythical creatures that we talk about, especially during Halloween, right? I still remember at your place, Carly, when we would gather when we were small, and then it was on the balcony, and then we would just be there sitting around and sharing our ghost stories. It was every October 31, I think.
I
I don't
don't.
Really?
remember.
I
I
don't
don't
Oh, come
remember.
remember.
on.
I don't remember
Trish.
us having a balcony either.
Okay, now you're scaring me.
Yeah, I don't. I have
Well,
never seen Carly's balcony, Trish. I don't remember. I'm just kidding.
Kidding
you can,
around. Yeah, we did have one. You're not crazy.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah.
it's a tradition that we always did, even with our older siblings, or maybe our cousins, or even the older generations. There's always that kind of scary story that they have hanging around to make sure that we behave, or to make sure that we're scared to go out at night or disobey them. Like what you said, Carl. For you guys, it's the lady next door, right? For us, it's like manananggals at night. That's when they feed. So don't stay out at night, especially when your parents are like, okay, come home, right? And it's a usual Filipino thing. And I think you're right, Trish, when you said that it's usually the older generations who do that. I don't know if that was their scare tactic. Getting into that, I think it kind of got ingrained into our culture at times. I do remember as a child, we were super fond of horror trains. You know, when there's like a festival, right? We call it peria. I don't know what peria is in
Like a
English.
Carnival?
circus,
Yeah,
carnival.
it's
Yeah.
like a little carnival, smaller than a carnival, but we had rides, right? We had like Ferris wheels. We had what we called the caterpillar, which was just like a merry-go-round that went around. That was like a mini roller coaster, and then we had stuff like horror trains. It's a train that goes in a circular pattern. It just goes around, and then like for half of the ride, it's covered in a room, right? So you go into a tunnel, and then in that tunnel there's just like a bunch of people who are gonna try and spook you, all of that. There's creepy lights and all of that. I'm sure it happens in a lot of other cultures, but I do always recall that that's something that was always present. Let's say the festival is on
Mascara.
during summer. Yeah, maybe mascara festival, but that's on October. There are some festivals that happen in June, July. It has
Or
nothing to do with
yeah,
Halloween.
or even in universities,
Yeah,
right? We would
right.
have like horror rooms.
Yes, yes. Even
As-
in during high
mm,
school, we also had stuff like that. So it's sort of like we kind of like to get scared now. So it's
I remember when we were kids. I don't know if we did it during meetings, but us cousins, especially when some of my cousins would go to Bacolod from different places, we'd do our own horror rooms, and then we'd have two groups. One will be the visitors and one will be the ghosts or whatever you want to call it. And then after one round we'll switch, so we'll do it again and again until we're tired. And it kind of became a tradition, because if you remember, our house had a huge basement until
oh
it
yeah,
was
oh my
yeah,
god.
that
subdivided
was
into
scary.
rooms.
I'm
That wasn't
sorry, Kyle,
scary.
but your basement was all kinds of scary, man.
No. There was a time when we had a house helper. Her name's Yai Becca, and she had really long hair.
I don't
Oh,
remember
And she was
I
her.
don't remember
tall
her
and she was
either.
old.
Oh my
And
god.
one time we wanted to use her as our ghost for our horror.
Oh my
So of course, if anyone hasn't been to a horror room, you're basically touring the house, and every room you walk into, there's someone gonna scare you and all that. Like Ariana Grande. When he did you
god.
have you seen
What?
that?
No.
No,
No,
never
I
mind.
have.
Can you explain
Yeah,
it?
tell
What
us.
was that?
Yeah.
Because
What
I'm not
about
very
Ariana Grande?
confident with my information. But I think it was Ellen DeGeneres.
DeGeneres, yeah.
In her show, she has a producer. I think Andy is his name. And they do this thing where he and Ariana Grande walk into a horror room or a horror house, and then they
Oh.
video the whole thing. And the
Oh yeah,
producer,
yeah, yeah. There's
right?
different things. I've seen different celebrities do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, I think particularly Ariana and the producer, and they do it together, and they're really easily scared, so it's really funny.
Yeah,
But
I think I've seen
that's
that.
how
Yeah.
a horror room
So
is.
it's your hug. Not
And
as elaborate as the one on Ellen DeGeneres,
yeah,
but yeah, something like that.
a very amateur horror house, horror room. So when we did it one time, we were all kids, and then we used Yai Becca. We actually used her because she was watching her favorite teleserie, and because she wouldn't leave, what we did was when it was our turn, she was just facing the TV, and
Oh
we
my
turned it to a
god.
channel that was just gray with all those black spots,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
dead
Oh,
channel.
yeah.
And then she was just there sitting down with her hair like
Oh
covered
my
Oh
god.
my
covered in
goodness.
face.
I want to.
And
I mean,
I
I
just
mean,
thought
we've
it's
never
funny.
experienced. Yeah, we've never experienced your horror. I think maybe we have. Maybe we just can't recall because I do remember
Yeah.
there were times that, we went down into your basement. Okay, just to give context to everybody listening, their basement really goes down, like deep down. There's
The
steps going down.
underworld.
There's a platform, and then it goes down even more. So it's really underground, and it's a pretty big space. We used to do all of our activities down there, and even your living room was kind of down there as well. So that whole place, I kind of recall there was a time that it was converted into something like a horror room, and oh man, that's a pretty fun tradition to have with you and your
Yeah.
cousins. Do your parents get in on it?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they would join us. Our aunts and uncles, they would join us
Is
sometimes.
it like a competition then? Is it like, oh, who could scare more, the older generation or the kids?
No, no. Sometimes they just join us for fun, but not necessarily an adults and kids kind of competition. But I remember one of our cousins would always be scared, and she just cries.
Oh
Aw.
no. Oh no, you
Oh, that's
guys.
Kirsten.
Oh,
Kirsten.
shout out to Kay, little Kay, who cried in the corner. Oh, I
She's
bet I
all
No,
bet she's traumatized because of you guys, and she can't
no.
like go into dark places anymore because
It's because
of
of
you
that
guys.
experience. She's very tough now, and
Bawi,
it
bawi.
didn't break her.
It didn't break. It made her stronger.
it made
Isn't that
her a
right?
Yes.
strong person.
It
Thank you,
really made.
horror.
So if anything, Kay, you should thank Carly for making
For
for
making you
making you a
stronger.
stronger person. But I mean, I wish we all had that. I mean, as a CFM group, right? We should have had something like that,
I think we
especially.
had that.
Did we?
I'm not so sure, huh? But I remember going into your older sister's room, and then it was dark, and then there were like arms pulling our legs. We go in from the first door and exit at the last
Ah,
door.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Remember
yeah, yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
so
Yeah.
that's like a
okay, so Carly's house has a basement and an attic.
an
So
attic. So
it's
it
the
was the
best
best
place. It
horror
was the best
house.
place
And the
to stage
attic
a
has
horror.
a mango tree on the
Oh
side.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
on the
the
side,
mango
yeah.
tree. So that's
Oh,
where the capre lives.
oh my God, Capre for those who don't know is a really large man. That's basically the gist of what a
And
capre
lives
is. That
in trees.
lives in a tree and smokes a huge cigar. Same with
Yeah.
what a tikbalang is. Tikbalang is a half horse, half man. I
It's
don't know
an
what you call that in like Greek mythology or whatever mythology it is, but it's also a half horse, half man who also smokes a cigar.
Yeah,
Something
like a
about
demon
smoking
horse.
cigars, yeah, a demon horse. Something
What's up
about
with
cigars.
cigars?
With cigars and the Filipino culture. We don't even smoke cigars here. We smoke cigarettes. So it would have been better if it was a cigarette.
too fancy.
It makes it
So
fancy. It makes
sad.
it our
So
tikbalangs and our
posh.
capres are actually just like really big people who are just fancy and they're they're just minding their own business and people just make up scary stories about them. But there are so many stories about like that mythical creatures that we had here of folklore. So that's one of two of them. And it's always scary to note that if there is a big tree in your vicinity, be prepared for people to like talk about it saying that, oh, don't ever go near that tree. It's ominous.
Yeah.
There's a kapre, there's atikbalang, or there's mga diwende. Diwende, basically, they're dwarves who cast spells on you, which is crazy because we also have this saying, yung tabi-tabi. We say that before we play in an area if we're disturbing maybe a particular area, especially one that's in a wooded, foresty place. That's when we say all those things just to make sure we're not like offending nature spirits, which, by the way, is something that you might consider believing in because, as you know, the world is like a ball of energy. So there are different kinds of energy, I guess. And I think it's better to be safe than sorry, right? Because there have been so many instances of people talking about experiences that they've had when coming up or going to a particular place that's known to be a cesspool of, either black magic or some crazy paranormal activities. I think one of them is in Aklan place.
Antique.
Antique? Is it
That's
Antique?
where, yeah, because I remember when I was in high school, that's where we went. So we had this Napsea folk dance competition, and we went through the regionals with the titas and the parents, stage parents. So anyway, we were in one bus, and then the bus smelled like garlic. It was
Oh,
because
because you're
they say that garlic combats those evil
yes,
spirits.
yes.
So we were equipped with garlic by our parents before we dance on stage. So imagine us smelling like garlic.
But it's
Hilarious.
garlic is a deterrent. It can be a deterrent to vampires if you're
Vampire.
if you're
Yeah.
somewhere in the Western Hemisphere. But here to us, it's also a deterrent for mangkukulam, witches, right?
Yeah.
And some other like evil spirits. And I remember when we always visit Sikihor, that's also
Oh
another
yes.
place that our parents have always said, oh, it's full of mangkukulam, it's full of black magic and all of that. Actually, they say resorts in the area always need to be blessed. Like there is a particular either priest or albulario. That's right, no?
Arbolario,
Yeah,
yeah.
albulario who
Witch doctor.
constantly, yeah, witch doctor who constantly prays over the area just so nothing particular happens. I do have some stories shared to me by a bunch of friends, like similar to what happened to you, Trish, which was basically it was a regional thing like Nopsea, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then there's weird happenings. For example, one of our friends grew like a second hump or like a second pair of breasts on his back. And it was just exclusive, if you would say, to that part in Antique. Like literally, it was
Oh my
for the
god.
time that they were there, it something grew, and then when they left, it was gone. It's
Seriously?
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy to think that stuff like that happens. We have different kinds of folklore, I guess, with that, with the Mangkukulam. They're the ones who also provide gayumas
Oh
being
yeah.
love
Love
potions,
potion.
right? And
Love
sometimes
potion.
they say that stuff really works. So I don't use it. Come on,
Yeah.
Trish.
Are you
I
sure?
don't have first-hand experience. Oh, yeah, funny. My girlfriend just loves me because of gayuma.
Let's ask her.
Yeah, you gotta
Did
ask her.
you
You gotta
drink
have
Did
something?
you drink something or you fell for
did
Luigi?
Luge ever give or slip you a drink where afterwards he was just like super dreamy? Like stuff like that. Black magic, it's you
Yeah,
never
they
know.
actually have that in souvenir shops in Sikihor. Love potions and other kinds of potions. It's crazy. And I even remember one of my uncles sharing with me a time. I'm not sure if it was Sikihor or Antique, but he went there, he rode a taxi, and then he felt like going around in circles. But then the driver didn't say anything, so he decided to go down. And then when he went down, he spoke to this person, but only to realize they say, I'm not so sure with my data or the credibility of the statement, but told me that if the person doesn't have like dividing portion here, what do you
On the
call
lip,
that?
yeah.
It's not really
A
that
person?
person isn't really a person or a human being. So it's kind of like a determining factor that the person you're talking to is something else. So after that conversation, he just left and rode another taxi. Finally, he was able to get out of that particular place.
He might have been
Oh
scammed.
my
How
god,
much did
I
he
don't know.
pay?
I don't.
Just a scam. It
Yeah,
was just
it's
a
just a
taxi
scam. It's
scam.
not.
Did he have
don't.
to pay? Did he have to pay?
I actually really don't know because I easily get scared, so I didn't delve into the details anymore.
It was just some guy
It's
who
just
was
like,
driving in
that's it.
circles, and he's like, he's gonna be totally scared. He goes out, I get my payment. That's it. It's just some
Crazy.
scammer in a taxi. But right in those situations, like what my parents told me is that if something is trying to mess with you, what you do is you take off your shirt and put it on backwards
Oh
because
yeah, I've heard
that
of
will,
that.
right, that will confuse, I guess, the thing that's been playing with you. Because I've had a similar experience, kinda. Not as, I guess, severe as what whoever you heard this from. Basically, mine was in Ateneo, and if you know, our campus is kind of big. It's very foresty, somewhat like UP, but UP, of course, is more foresty. It's legit a forest, and then they're just buildings strategically placed. Ours is almost the same, and then there's this road I always take going back to the dorm from Katipunan Avenue. Well, it's all red brick road, but it's somewhere that you pass, and it's like a row of trees, and then there's just a main road, and then there's a sidewalk with red bricks. And it usually, it takes me like what, 15 minutes to get back to the dorm. But on this particular night, if I were to look at my watch, I've already spent like 20 minutes walking in a particular portion of that road only, not even getting back to the dorm. It's
Mhm.
super creepy. And of course, at the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my god, somebody or something is playing with me. It didn't go into my head like, okay, I should take off my shirt in the middle of public, and then swap it back. It's more of, I just didn't pay attention to it. Just like, I tried to make sure I wasn't thinking about it. So I'm on my phone or listening to music. I'm just like, okay, nothing's happening. So it took me around like double the time it usually takes me to get back to the dorm. So that was one of the experiences that I had. And mind you, this, I wasn't high. there was no there was no drugs involved, because if there was drugs, I would have known. It was just the thought of time being slow. But that stuff is crazy, especially when it happens to you. Oh my god, I gotta tell you something,
Yeah.
man. The goosebumps you get from it, something else, man. Something else.
I had this experience. Let's go back to our basement
Oh my god, your basement.
because it was one big space until we divided it into rooms for me and my brother. There was a time, I was already in high school, and I was sleeping, having one of those afternoon naps, or was it a nighttime nap? I'm not sure. Anyway,
Nighttime
uh,
nap, really? It wasn't just sleeping.
I was actually sleeping. Let's just go with I was sleeping, and one night I couldn't move, and we
Oh,
call it bangungot,
sleep paralysis.
sleep paralysis.
Hmm.
And I had one of those nights. But the weirdest part was I saw myself sleeping, and
Ah,
in my dream I saw someone walk in the room. I actually recognized the person. It was one of my friends.
oh,
But when I saw myself sleeping, there was a black figure. Like if I was sleeping vertically, the black figure was on top of
yeah.
me, like
Oh my god.
horizontally, like in my head, not like on
Oh
top of
my
me,
god.
but above me. Does that make sense? Anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it
It does.
pretty much makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
you
it
can
was
see my scared face, so it makes sense.
well when I have bangungot or sleep paralysis, they say try to move your toes first.
Extremities,
Yeah,
extremities, yeah.
toast.
Yeah,
Toes and
and
fingers.
then because you're conscious in some way, I also say a prayer, the angel of God. I repeat it again and again, and then eventually I became conscious again. And then I just went to my parents' room and told them all about it,
Oh
and
my.
they put some incense in my room. That's what I
Mhm.
did.
Does it happen to you a lot?
I think that
Or
was the
not?
biggest memory I have. Like,
But it does happen to you.
still have sleep paralysis
Hmm. Yeah.
from time to time, but I feel like it only happens when I'm very tired,
Yeah. Yeah,
not
it does.
necessarily
Yeah.
like just as a random thing.
Yeah, because I still have sleep paralysis constantly. I mean, right now, sometimes it just becomes a challenge. Maybe I kind of like the feeling now, but the I believe yours is also partly lucid dreaming, which is basically why you have an outer body experience. But for example, me right now, if I have it, it's kind of like a challenge. Can I just wake myself up without using my extremities? Because well, the very first time that it happened to me, I was also here in Manila, but it was still in high school. We just got back from SIPA. You know what that is, Carl? It's the SACEDA international program where
Trish
we
went to
fly.
Siseda with me.
You did,
Yeah.
Trish? Oh my
Yeah, we
God,
were batchmates.
Trish, SIPA mates.
So
Woo!
you went to Saseda,
Yeah, dude. Of
Luigi?
course. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
I thought
sir.
it was only Gian.
No,
So
it was me as well. Did you
we
guys go to
actually just
Singapore
no,
also?
we actually just joined the LaSalle group. So we
Mm,
were three Scholasticans who participated with them
yeah.
because it was basically our own initiative, and we weren't able to join Singapore
Oh yeah.
because it wasn't really excused.
Oh,
So
sad.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
too
I
bad.
heard as well. So my batchmates from Saints Co as well, who participated
Mhm.
in said that weren't able to go to Singapore as well because of the same thing. So we get
Going back
back
to
from
the story.
Singapore. Yeah, going back to the
Mhm.
story, we come back from Singapore and we sleep in this sketchy as fuck hotel somewhere in, I want to say in Old Manila, maybe in Baclaran, something like that. But funny us, we had to watch like this horror show right before we went to sleep. True celebrity ghost stories, I think. But yeah, we watched that before sleeping, and that night was the first night that I ever got sleep paralysis, and it was the scariest
Oh
shit
my
you could
god.
ever think of. I wake up, I couldn't move. It felt heavy, right, Carl? It's like a heavy feeling that you can't get up. And then basically before I even researched about it, I find out that your senses are usually heightened. So I didn't know what at that time, but some shit was whispering in my ear, like murmuring something. And then like what you said, Carl, there was a shadowy figure at the foot of my bed. It was a little round. I kinda always tell the story saying that it was like a shadow of like a penguin, just so I wouldn't scare myself. But it was kind of like that, like that shape basically. But I remembered what my mom told me, which was the extremity. So I do that, and mind you, this I was already like cold sweating like crazy because it was that scary. And then at that time, I was bunking with somebody, so there were two beds, and the four of us in a room. And like after I could finally move, I'm like sweating, and then I just spooned my friend who was with me in that queen size bed, and then he was like, "Yo, what the hell, man?" And I was like, I was just like, man, just let me do this, please. Just let me do this, please. I'm like hella scared right now. I had a bangungot and all that. He was cool about it. Shout out to you, Will, man. You saved my life, saved my life. But it's scary shit. And now after that, it just kept happening. The weirdest one I had was on a plane ride going to Ozamis, and I was legit sleeping like this, like on the armrest. And then when I wake up, I'm like, oh my god, like sleep paralysis again. so so it sort of became normal, I guess, if you would say that. So now if I have a sleep paralysis, I challenge myself to try to wake up without using my extremities. So like brute
Mm.
force, just trying to wake up. Or sometimes, I get annoyed and I just try to fall back asleep. But it's not really something that scares me now because I did the research, and it used to be something like some evil spirit is trying to tell you something or something like that. But now it's like, no, you just can't. You're just really tired, but you wake up in the
Mhm.
middle of a REM cycle, rapid eye movement cycle. This is why you kind of project some stuff because you're basically in a dream state. Your body is super tired. Your body is shut off, but your brain's still active. That's why all of that happens, and that's why it feels like you can't move because your body is basically shut off. So when you know the science about it, it tends to not be as scary anymore. I hope this helps
Mhm.
you, Carl, and I hope it helps you, Trish. If ever you get sleep paralysis, you'd be like, oh, I'm just tired and my brain's still functioning.
Just mind over matter.
Mind over matter. Come on, that image at the back of the door, oh, that's nothing. That's
Penguin.
It's a
a penguin.
penguin.
Come on. For anyone who's experienced sleep paralysis, it's terrifying the first time, but when you kind of know the science behind it, it's kind of okay. Actually, one tip is for you not to lie down on your back when you sleep, like straight on your
Oh,
back. It's
yeah.
better to be on your side.
Side. Mm-hmm.
You don't really get sleep paralysis when you sleep like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Some of you may have sleep paralysis on your sides, but for me, it works most of the time. Just some information. The more you know.
I remember it happening to me another time. I was in the sofa and your brain's active, but you can't move. So the first thing that you do is ask for help. It was scary for me because in my head I was shouting for help. I was calling someone's name out and they couldn't hear and they're just there standing and doing something else. You feel like you need help but they can't hear you and it's the worst feeling ever. And then you just wake up and you're like, "Didn't you hear me?"
I was screaming. Come on. But yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
like
I've never had sleep paralysis, but I had the same experience with you, Carly, when you were like trying to scream and ask for help, but no one can hear you. I don't know if it was just a nightmare or something, but it felt so real. And speaking of room experiences, I had this one encounter that still gives me some chills whenever I recall particular experience. So it happened recently, last 2016, graduation year in college. So we were part of the yearbook. Carly knows that because she also is part of the yearbook. Anyway, we went to Davao. So we stayed in this hostel. It's not
yeah,
really a hotel, it's like a
yeah, it's
motel or
hostel.
something
Yeah,
like that.
hostel.
So I was so sick that time that I wasn't able to join the whole team to go to the publishing company and do our work. I stayed in my room during the morning and I was fine alone. So my mom called me. And then when she asked me how I was, she was wondering why it seemed so loud and like a lot of people are talking. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm the only one in my room and my TV's off. So I was like, okay, bye for now. And then I just tried to sleep because I wasn't
Oh,
feeling well at that time. And I tried to forget about it. So nighttime came and one of our staff joined me in the room. So he was staying in the couch. So basically the couch is near the door for the listeners. And my bed was in right across the comfort room and then it was at the edge of the other side. So we were far away from each other. So I was sleeping at that time. It was only after that he shared with me that he actually has a third eye. And he was saying that, Trish, did you know that there's this kid who keeps peeking from the comfort room, from the restroom? So
bro.
he tried to check it out. And then when he checked it out, the faucet immediately turned on and then it just turned off and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me that right after, because imagine I was the only one in that room for the whole day and probably that's what my mom was hearing, like all those sounds, because there was somebody with me in the room and they would say that sometimes those spirits or whatever you call them would have this really strong energy that it can also affect you physically. So probably why I was feeling so ill at that time, because it just started when we went into to that hostel. And then right after, I felt a little better when we went back to Bacolod. It happened in Davao. I'm
Oh
not
my
sure if I
god.
mentioned that earlier, but oh my goodness, that was like the worst experience I had. Oh, it's crazy. I mean, remembering it, trying, I, I repressed that in my memories, but now that we talk about it, it still gives me some goosebumps.
You gotta hold your rosary tight, Trish, tonight. You
Yeah,
gotta
I know.
recalling
It's
that
right
memory. But
beside me.
on the topic of that, getting into I guess the real stuff that we
Mhm.
did during our briefing, and as you know, there are people who have third eyes, or what they call it, someone who could see into the spirit plane. Usually that's what they call it. I do have a tita, an aunt, who has the same ability, and it's not just seeing dead people, right? Because it's usually like that. For those who have that third eye, they usually just see dead people. But in this case, she could see what I would like to kind of call nature spirits, because they come in all different shapes and sizes. And I mean, we started out with Philippine folklore. We started out with all the imagery that our parents put into our heads, like the kapres and the manananggals and the tikbalangs. And in this instance, hearing it from this person, the descriptions really match what our parents have been talking about. One of those that was confirmed by my aunt is the tikbalang, half horse, half man. But there was an instance where this tikbalang actually hangs out with some person. And sometimes it becomes a manifestation. So these creatures are sometimes formed because of the aura that a person is giving off. And so that becomes like their, I don't know if it's right to say, but like a familiar. A familiar is, I don't know how you would describe a familiar. I'm not sure if you're also familiar with that, with the term, but a familiar is like maybe like a spirit animal, like, right? Like that's what people usually say. It's like their spirit animal, something like that. Like this tikbalang would basically follow this guy around. So it's like the aura that's either attracting them or like manifesting them. So they're created by all this negative aura and all that. And that's why there's these natural spirits. It's hard to say that I want to not think about it, because I used to not be a firm believer in, like, the spiritual, not spiritual as in religion, but like these spiritual beings, or basically paranormal activities and all of that. I'm not a firm believer of that until like I heard that there was actual proof of that happening, and why it affects a lot of people, or like the aura of a place, an aura of a person. Because I mean, if you think about it, going back to like Philippine folklore, there's some really crazy, aswangs or monsters that they come up with, or they've talked about. One of those is like the manananggal, right? And a manananggal basically is a person that is torn at the torso, and at night, well, during the day, I mean, they're a normal person going around, but at night, their body gets cut in half, and the top half grows wings, and that would be the one that goes out in search of food. And their
Food
favorite meal is basically babies, right? Or
unborn.
pregnant, yeah, pregnant women, or maybe fetus. I think there's also like an aswang that also just feeds on fetuses and all of that. So it's crazy, you think about it and you're like, come on, man, that's gotta be the craziest thing you've ever heard of. But then you hear all of these stories from a lot of people. Like another one of my tita, she was like, yeah, our household help used to date a manananggal. And they were like,
What?
what? That's crazy, because it's crazy. So this is the story. They had a big house, right? And there were two floors, of course. One of those nights in particular, the reason why they told this story to us was because at night, when everybody was asleep, of course, our tita, or maybe a member of the family, woke up to go downstairs to get some water. And on this particular night, their household help was in a room on the second floor and was by the window. They could recall this very vividly, that their household help was talking to a guy who was literally floating outside the window. There was no ladder of any kind, nothing like that. And they were talking, basically, maybe the manananggal was serenading the household help, but stuff like that. It's stories like that that you're like, oh man, come on, get out of here. And then I hear from my tita, who has a third eye, which basically says like, yeah, that could happen. That
They
totally,
exist.
that's easy. That's They exist. So now you kind of like think about all the stuff that you've been hearing from everyone and from your parents especially, and you're like, holy crap, this shit might actually be real. So what do you do now? Are you going to be like cautious now, so go out at night? Do you like just stay at home all the time in fear of getting abducted by these like crazy aswangs and all of that? I don't know what the prerequisite is for being hunted or being followed by one of these, but you kind of like think at the back of your head, nah, I want to be safe. So what do you do now? It's crazy. And now I'm scared. And now I'm a firm believer in all of this, especially like the spiritual plane. So, change of perspective.
Yeah, and I always wonder, how do they like open the third eye, or is it a gift? Because some people would say it's a gift that you have
Yeah.
this third eye, but others would say it's a curse. So the others would go somewhere to have it closed, or
Mhm.
even there are actually even exorcists who try to assist those people and how to deal with like evil spirits, because as far as I know some priest friends who study this exorcism. They actually study this, get a degree or a certificate to be able to exorcise those kind of spirits. In a Catholic perspective, it's something that's real, that these spirits really do exist, those unrested souls, or they have like unfinished businesses.
Have you ever learned about it though, Trish? Is there like a pathway that leads you to becoming an unrested soul or like an ominous spirit instead of just going into the afterlife or like following, right? That's all what they always
Mhm.
say, like follow the light. So is it those people who don't follow the light who are like the ones who get trapped here, and then what happens? How do they become ominous presence or negative
Yeah.
spirits or haunting spirits? Because a lot of the times, like what my tita told us, is that most of the time, if there's a spirit present, they don't do anything. They're just chilling
They're
there,
just
like
there.
maybe in the corner. They don't really tend to like do anything.
Although some of them would say that those are demons, for example, who go into your body. Because, like, stories of saints, right? There's this saint named Padre Pio who was able to witness a demon go in a person's body. So the stories of the saints are actually real. That's my belief, that they're real and true to they're true stories. I guess it's somehow real, but as to how it works, I really don't know. Because, like, for example, in our psychology classes, we have Psikologiyang Filipino, and there we talk about the mythical creatures like aswangs, tikbalangs, and stuff like
Really?
that, because it's part of understanding the psychology of Filipino, since it's part of our culture, and also some bits and pieces of our upbringing. As to the legitimacy of it, I'm not really sure. And with the exorcism part, I guess it's more of, I don't know if it's really demons or unrested souls. Have no idea. I think we should invite an exorcist one
Oh
time.
my god,
Yeah,
that
that
would
would be so cool.
part
Part
two
two.
coming this
Yeah.
October. If Trish, if you know anybody who does that kind of stuff, maybe you could invite them to the podcast one of these times, and that's going to be a deep dive into exorcism 101.
Oh
Oh my god,
yeah.
that would be hella creepy, but also hella exciting to learn about that.
I think I won't be available then.
Give me a date and time. I won't be available this October, this whole of October, but that's something to think about. That's really something to think about. I mean, that's getting into the more religious side of things, because you see all of these videos
Mm,
online. It's like, oh, exorcism in a church, and it's you don't know if it's true or not. Most of it is really, really fake and really weird. You never know with these kind of things. But that's just the mystery. That's just the mystery of our world and stuff that we don't understand a lot about. Crazy, crazy stuff.
I'm just too scared right now to say anything.
Do you have
All
any
right.
other stories?
I mean, I guess if Carly's too scared and Trish is holding her rosary, I think that's a great place to
No
leave
worries.
it, right? That's a great place to leave it. So thank you guys for like sharing all of your stories. I'm sure if Trish is able to find someone we could interview to get a deeper dive into these kinds of things, that would
Yeah.
be another amazing episode. I've had a lot of fun recording this because it's something, goes back to our childhood. But I bet if it was our like 8-year-old selves in this podcast, they'd be scared shitless, right? They'd be like, "Oh my god, it's real! Like all of this stuff is real." And at least processing it as an adult, I think we could better understand what it is that were so afraid of when we were kids. So thank you guys. Thank you for participating in this podcast. Thank you to all our listeners out there. Again, if you like our content, please like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel where we usually post shorter versions or even just the regular versions with our faces on them. We appreciate all of the love that you guys have been giving us. We've gotten comments, we've gotten feedback, and we're always trying to improve our podcast. So thank you very much. This is the family signing off. Peace.
Thank you.
Much
Tabi-tabi
love.
po.
Tabi-tabi.
Tabi-tabi po.
Tabi-tabi po. Tabi-tabi. Whoever we offended, please don't haunt us.